episode number 1 of Monster Kid Radio, Portland's newest podcast. It's the podcast where Karloff is still king, Bela Lugosi still lives, and John Agar rules. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'm the producer of the show. I'm the main guy on the show. You're going to hear me week after week after week. We're going to have a rotating schedule of guests on the show, and for episode 1, I've got special guest Chris McMillan. How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're at Wonder Northwest. What do you think of the show?
I'm liking it so far. It's been a great convention. Really small. You get to see a lot of things. There's not the big crowds. You don't have to wade through people. It's been a lot of fun.
A nice variety of things too.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, we like our monster movies, but you got your sci-fi stuff. You got a lot of cosplay. There's all sorts of stuff out there.
Yeah, and I finally got to see what was it? Browncoat's Redemption, the Serenity fan film. That was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, with Monster Kid Radio, with what we're doing here, I mean, we're doing our first episode. We've got an agenda scheduled to get to, but before we get into that, I want to let people know that we've got a trivia contest that we're doing. Okay, so pay special attention because I'm going to kind of sort of give you the answer to the trivia question that we're going to do at the end of the show. Or the episode of what we're doing here. So pay attention, take notes or something. I don't know. Okay. So with Monster Kid Radio, we celebrate the best of the classic and sometimes not so classic genre movies of yesteryear. And our time frame, our reference typically is anywhere from the 30s to the 60s. We might toe dip a little bit into the 70s as the show goes along. But for the most part, it's 30s through the 60s. That style of genre movie making, as creaky as some of it might be now, we love it. Even the stuff that might not be so good. We love it, and we're going to celebrate that here on the show. To kick off what we're doing with Chris McMillan and I, we're going to talk about our top 3 classic monster movies. Now, we were talking about this before we started recording.
Yeah, that's a tough thing.
It's tough. We have our favorites. We might have our favorite too, but, man, our third, check with us in about half an hour. It'll probably change. Just because we love so many of them.
Yeah, my problem was I kept thinking of all these movies and it's like, oh yeah, that was so good. Oh, but I already picked that one. Oh no. It just kind of, I went through so many changes in my mind before I even called him and told him, okay, here's the 3, I think.
Yep. And actually, when I told him what my third was, to make sure we didn't double up, I've changed it since then. So, I had to bump Godzilla. So sorry, Kaiju Cast. We had to bump Godzilla a little bit. So. But we'll dive right into it here. We're going to start with Chris's number 3. He's the guest, so he goes first. Oh,
well, thank you. I picked Jason and the Argonauts. It was the first Ray Harryhausen film I'd ever seen. And, when you get to the, you see the Hydra towards the end, and that was amazing. And I thought, oh, nothing's going to top that. Then you get the Children of the Hydra coming out, and when they, the soundtrack screams for them, that was just
yes.
it. I mean, you're just like, whoa, glued to it. It was just an amazing film. Just so many creatures, so many wonderful moments. And that film is referenced so many times. If you look at the Brandon Fraser remake of The Mummy, the scene with the mummies is basically the sword fighting scene with the skeletons, just CGI'd and not quite as good.
Army of Darkness.
Oh, yeah, definitely
Sam Raimi's
heavy.
Definite love of Harryhausen. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention at least that we did just lose Ray Harryhausen a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. I mean, his impact on pretty much all genre cinema.
Oh, everybody who's in special effects now probably started out looking at his work. It's obvious. You look at all the effects works going on, currently, and it's like everybody's given a tribute to Ray in some movie at some point. So his work cannot, the importance of it cannot be overstated.
I don't think cinema would be where it is now if not for Harryhausen. And you mentioned, special effects. Even something like the Disney film Monsters, Inc. references Harryhausen.
Oh, yeah, that's the sushi bar, isn't it?
Harryhausen's is the name of the restaurant or whatever. So, I mean, it's obvious that Harryhausen had an impact on what we do and what we love so much. My Harryhausen story, which I'll probably talk about on a future episode in Monster Kid Radio, involves a nightmare that I got just by looking at a poster. So, that's a tease for a future episode of MKR down the line. So, when was the first time you saw Jason and the Argonauts?
Oh, I don't remember. I was like 10 or 11. It was on a TV show in California where I was living at the time, and it was just amazing. I saw it in black and white the first time because my folks did not do color TV for a long time because they were worried about the radiation from it. So I had to.
You turned out normal.
Talk to my parents about that one. But nice. And then every time it came on, because I was watching this stuff way before videotapes came out. I would just every time it was on, that would be the movie that had to be playing. I didn't care what else was on. That was it.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a little bit younger than you, I think, in terms of being able to watch a lot of the stuff on TV without VCRs, without VHS and all that. So I regret that I never grew up watching it that way, because I can just imagine, watching it on a black and white TV or whatever, and just, man.
And then you see it in color and your mind's blown.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my number 3, like I said, it was Godzilla until about 3 days ago. So Godzilla is my number 4. Just don't tell him because, well, I'd lose in that fight. But I also produce a Hammer Films podcast, a monthly Hammer show called 1951 Down Place. And I love my Hammer movies, so I had to mention a Hammer film as my number 3. I went with 1958's The Revenge of Frankenstein, starring Peter Cushing as Frankenstein. It was, for my money, I love Colin Clive in the original Frankenstein from Universal, but Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein is my man. I mean, that's my guy right there. Directed by Terrence Fisher, so it's got that fairy tale kind of feel going to it. And it's Hammer, so it's in vivid, bloody color. Which, again, it hits me where I live, man. I love that stuff. I love the Hammer films.
I never got a chance to see Hammer films when I was a kid because when I was about in the 6th grade, we moved up here to Vancouver, Washington, and Portland was not a very big market, so they would mostly show really old movies that you never heard of, and so it wasn't until VHS where I started getting into the Hammer films. And I had seen all the Universal monsters, and then to see this was just amazing stuff. And Cushing nailed Dr. Frankenstein. I mean, he wasn't a mad scientist. He was like an arrogant bastard. I mean, he didn't care what he had to do his, to make his experiments happen. He just did it. It was, the hell with it all. And he hit that perfectly.
Agreed. Now, see, for me, I sort of grew up watching the Universals. I'll talk about that here in a bit. I didn't know anything about the Hammer films. I knew who Peter Cushing was because he was in Star Wars. But other than that, I didn't know anything about this stuff. I was working at a video store, and some radio DJ was there doing some sort of special event, and he knew I liked these classic monster movies, and he starts spouting off Evil of Frankenstein, Taste the Blood of Dracula, and I'm like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. What are these movies? He goes home, comes back, and has like 3 VHS tapes in SLP speed, so he's got like 4 movies, 8 movies, whatever, crammed onto these tapes, and it's the complete Dracula collection from Hammer and the complete Frankenstein saga from Hammer. And over the course of like a week, I watched them all in a row and just consumed these movies, and I was taken from that point on. I was a Hammer guy, as well as a Universal guy, but man, the Frankenstein films always, it might be blasphemous to say, but I'm on Team Cushing versus Team Lee. I love Peter Cushing's Frankenstein. Just, man.
Well, Lee kind of got, he got stuck with a lot of roles that didn't allow him to talk. He was the monster in the original, in Hammer's first Frankenstein.
Oh, for Lee? Yeah, for Christopher Lee.
Yeah. He was, Dracula, and after the horror of Dracula, he never spoke in that role again. So,
the Mummy?
Oh, yeah, he was the Mummy, too. Yep. So, he never really got a chance to. He acted, but he never got a chance to do what Cushing got to do, which is just really perform.
And, we talk about this on my Hammer podcast. When you watch a Peter Cushing film, whether it's Hammer or not, watch his hands, because he's always doing something with his hands. Even if it's not in the script, they used to call him Props Cushing or Hot Props Cushing, because he was always looking for some sort of business to do while he was performing, and it just adds that extra level of completeness to the character.
Steve McQueen must have taken lessons, because if you look at some of his movies, he's always doing something.
Yes.
I remember that because I saw The Blob over in Florida. My parents recorded it for me when I was going down there. Like, we have The Blob. Okay.
Sign me up. Well, so those are our number 3s.
Mm-hmm.
What's your number 2?
Number 2, I have to go with The Thing from Another World, the original Howard Hawks movie. I know Hawks didn't direct it, but his influence is all over it. He's got one of the stronger female characters in a 1950s horror movie there. He's got a lot of the banter that you see in some of his comedies earlier, characters talking over each other, rapid-fire dialogue. He's developed, that movie's got a lot of tension to it, even though the monster looks kind of silly. But, it's James Arness looking kind of like Frankenstein's monster with claws, but they develop it so well. Yeah. And even to this day, when I'm watching that movie and the Geiger counter starts going up and they're reading it off, they still feel those little chills down my spine because it's coming. And, when they open up the doorway to the greenhouse and bam, wow, that just amazing film work. And it works so well. It just, everything worked so well in that movie. It's classic.
You mentioned Howard Hawks. It's on record, it's directed by Christian Nyby, but it is definitely a Hawks film, especially if you look at the isolation of the characters. It's got some Western things going on. It's a fantastic movie. And, you mentioned the stronger female characters, and I want to address that, I think, because a lot of the 50s, especially 50s B movies, well, heck, even going back to the 30s and 40s, a lot of the movies we're going to cover on Monster Kid Radio, we acknowledge that sometimes women roles probably aren't as fleshed out as some of the men roles. It's a product of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can really hold the movies at fault now, looking at these movies and appreciating them for what they are, because they're a snapshot of what society was at the time, right?
Yeah, and if you look at a few of them, Kenneth Tobey, who was the hero in The Thing, he was also in one of Ray Harryhausen's films, It Came From Beneath the Sea, the giant octopus. Well, 6-tentacled octopus. Those two movies, he played against really strong female characters for the time. Margaret Sheridan in The Thing was, she wasn't the obligatory person, woman who's supposed to go, ah, and scream and be threatened by the monster. She actually figures out how to kill him. She comes up with the idea. It Came From Beneath the Sea. Kenneth Tobey meets this female marine biologist and figures, oh, well, she's going to drop everything. And she wants to keep her career. It was changing slowly. Women back in the 50s were actually getting to play doctors, grad students, and all of that. Their roles in the movies, what they were supposed to do didn't change much, but it was starting. And it's interesting to watch those movies and take a look at that.
Yeah, and just something to kind of throw out there. It's one of those things about these types of movies that sometimes turn some folks off. So I just want to throw that out there. And, just absorb it for what it is and recognize, where things were at the time. But now we're getting awfully serious. Let's talk some more about.
I went long-winded. Sorry.
No. I brought it up. So let's go from the women's right movement in film to giant scorpions. My number two movie is The Black Scorpion from 1957, directed by Edward Ludwig. Man, I love this film. It's stop-motion scorpion effects. A giant scorpion. Actually, it's more than one. Giant scorpion terrorizing Mexico. By Willis O'Brien, the man who did the King Kong stop-motion effects, did the Black Scorpion in this, except for the close-ups. For whatever reason, the studio decided they needed some close-ups, and they brought in somebody to do a Black Scorpion puppet head that looks a little silly.
A little silly?
It's added to the movie's charm over the years, but whatever. Yeah. It's got some great stop-motion effects. And I love this movie because it's got one of my favorite actors from these types of movies in it, and that's Richard Denning.
Oh, yeah.
Who would become the husband of Evelyn Ankers, who appeared in The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., and I believe she was also in Son of Dracula.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Now, Evelyn Ankers was at one point called the Queen of the Bees. She did not like Lon Chaney Jr.
No, I remember reading that. They did not get along, even though if you watch the movie, their chemistry really clicks in that film. They worked well together, but apparently they weren't very happy. They weren't very compatible off screen.
But she did like Richard Denning. Like I said, they got married. So. But Richard Denning's one of my favorite actors. He is in a movie we're going to talk about here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But the Black Scorpion, like I said, it's Mexico, giant black scorpions rampaging. What more do you need? That's the movie.
And some great stop motion.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Well, we kind of came together on our number one.
Yeah, and this was not intended. I just said, this is my number one, and Derek's like, oh, it's mine too. Perfect. So...
It is the creature from the Black Lagoon, My favorite movie, hands down, period, of all time. I like it better than anything else. I spent last weekend at the drive-in 2 nights in a row to watch it at the drive-in in 3D.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, how'd it look?
Yeah, it was raining, but it was great.
Yeah, isn't it great?
Oh, I'm sorry it was raining for you, though.
Yeah, it drizzled on us the first night, but, it's the Black Lagoon. It's wet. It's okay. There's rain. Whatever.
It adds to, when they're underwater, it looks like they're underwater even more now with the rain on the windshield.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, Richard Denning's in Creature from the Black Lagoon. He is one of the scientists, the one who's very big game hunter about the whole thing. It's also about Richard Carlson and Julie Adams, who I will refer to more than once through the course of this podcast and, just in general conversation. She's my 50s girlfriend. I've got a mad-on crush for her, and I'll just throw that out there right now. Sorry.
Well, I got to agree with him. I mean, when she walks out in that, she rocks that white one-piece suit, which for the time actually they were worried about because it's so high cut on the hips that they weren't sure they were going to be able to get it on the screen past, the motion picture board.
Right. I mean, it's tame now, but I mean, back then.
Back then, it was like, really?
Well, I have that reaction when I see it now.
Well, so do I. But what's really one thing, if you go, everybody I'm assuming has internet. Go on the internet. Life magazine did a photo spread of to publicize Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't think they ever made it into Life magazine, but someone got a hold of the photos. They're all online now. It's the Gilman. It's Julia Adams. I mean, it's great stuff.
Kerry Gemmel, who is an artist, did a lot of comic book work. He's also a self-proclaimed monster kid. Restored some of those photos as well, touched them up, made them look even better. So if you go look him up online as well, you'll find them, and the pictures are gorgeous.
Yeah, there's one of the creature coming out of the water. It's awesome.
Now, this movie's got a lot more going for it than just Julie Adams in the swimsuit. I mean, this is, in my opinion, the bridge between the Universal monster romps and the Universal sci-fi films. I mean, because Universal would move into doing sci-fi in the 50s with the Deadly Mantis, Tarantula, things like that. I mean, this has got your classic monster, you've got your sci-fi elements, you've got some great direction, courtesy of Jack Arnold, who, when it comes to Universal sci-fi movies, I mean, Jack Arnold is one of the masters.
And shooting underwater with those 3D rigs, I mean, there's like 2 cameras in this underwater box that they had to manipulate around. And Rico Browning, I mean.
Yeah, so the creature's played by 2 guys, and I don't know. I don't know what the level of knowledge is here, and I'm not trying to insult anybody by saying this, but there are 2 guys, if you didn't know, that played the creature in the first film. Rico Browning was the swimmer. He was all the underwater stuff, and Ben Chapman was the guy above ground. And 2 different guys, slightly different builds, but it doesn't matter.
Well, if you look closely on, when they're on land, the chest is a little broader and built out. And if you look underwater, it's not quite as big because Ben Chapman was a big guy.
He was a big guy. And Rico Browning was a professional swimmer and diver type. So, I mean, he was slim and lean and was able to do a lot of the underwater work because of his background with swimming. He would go on to do some other movies. He appeared in Revenge of the Creature as well as the creature. He would also create the TV show Flipper. So Rico Browning had an interesting career path. I had a chance to meet with him a couple of years ago. I think maybe last year or so at Crypticon Seattle.
Oh, nice.
Really nice guy. So,
and he really made the creature work. I'm sorry. Man. Ben Chapman looked great on land, but if it wasn't for his swimming ability, some of those underwater sequences just wouldn't have come off well. It wouldn't have worked as well as it did. The underwater ballet between him and Julia Adams, who it wasn't Julia Adams. I forget who it was. Who was?
It was a double.
Yeah, it was a double. I don't remember her name. I'd like to because I'd like to give her credit, but I don't remember it right now. That was amazing work. I mean, it just worked so well.
You add the visuals of that scene, the underwater cinematography, the 3D effects, and then the music. It is a wonderful Beauty and the Beast moment set to this underwater ballet. You called it a ballet. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. Now, Creature would spawn 2 sequels, Revenge of the Creature, and then The Creature Walks Among Us. Are you familiar with the other 2 movies?
Oh, yeah. I've got the Legacy Collection at home. Are you kidding me?
I love Revenge of the Creature because it's got one of my favorite B-movie actors in it. And then Creature Walks Among Us is off formula in that
he's not underwater.
Not very much. No, he's in it for like a second, and then he changes. He evolves. And I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. But Creature Walks Among Us is very interesting because there's a lot of story elements going on that have absolutely nothing to do with the creature. There's a potential adultery angle or a weird relationship, domestic
Mm-hmm.
a near abuse situation going on. And, it's just fascinating film for the 50s.
Yeah, and it really wrapped up the series well because the end, I'm not going to give away the ending, but it would work if they wanted to do another sequel, but it also brought the series to a close really nicely.
Yeah,
I mean, it really did. And you really feel for the creature at the end.
Yeah. I mean, the Gill Man is one of those iconic creatures, probably one of the last iconic creatures created by Universal's the Universal Monster Machine. So, now my first experience with a lot of these movies was through a series of books like this from Crestwood House. I found these in the kids section of the local library. I would bike down to the local library on the weekend because I was a geek and would go to the library for fun and go through the kids section and I found this series of these thin, hardback, orange-covered books, and each one was about Frankenstein or Dracula or Godzilla or Mad Scientist or It Came from Outer Space, The Mummy. It always had King Kong on the back page. I don't know if you can see it. I suggest you read about my friends, and then would list all the others. Over the years, I've added a couple of these to my collection, going on eBay, looking at used book sales and things. But I first became aware of these movies through these books. I hadn't even heard of them until I saw these books. And then I checked them all out, read them, consumed them, became a voracious fan just reading about them, and then finally saw the movies when I had access to my own VHS collection. And, well, that was that for me.
Yeah, I would catch them on TV down in California, and then not so much up here. Like I said, when I was living in Portland, when I moved up here, it wasn't a big market. We got a lot of the what would they be called? Non-copyright, the stuff public domain.
Yeah.
The stuff you find in the big Mill Creek collection. They would always show those things late at night.
Yeah.
So the nice thing is I got to see Horror Express when I was really young. That was fun.
Yeah,
and they didn't cut it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the public domain horror films now. There's been and this is probably a topic for a future episode of Monster Kid Radio, there's been a resurgence, especially online, of the horror host phenomenon over the past several years. That they've been able to dive into the Mill Creek collection and just really present some of these movies that have fallen into public domain that, by all rights, somebody should be making money off them because they're good, like White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for crying out loud, that's a classic film. Horror Express has slipped into public domain, and that's a fantastic Christopher Lee Peter Cushing film.
I mean, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And Telly Savalas is the Cossack. Oh, my God.
You wouldn't think it would work, but man, it does.
If you haven't seen that one, you've got to go find it.
Horror Express. It just had a great Blu-ray release not too long ago. Cleaned up, looks awesome, sounds great. The music is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So. But those are our top threes. And like we said at the beginning of this, ask me about half an hour, I'll probably change my number 3 to something else. But my top 2 are going to be Creature as well as The Black Scorpion, just because I love those two movies so much.
I have about 8 movies tied for number 3. I had to pick one.
What were some of the other ones that you went through?
Well, I was going through King Kong, which is just amazing work, just stunning. That was one of the, that was the first stop motion movie I ever saw. Psycho, which ushered in an entirely new wave of horror films, and I'm not talking slasher. I'm just
a different kind.
Just a different kind. What else was there? There were so many. Seventh Voyage of Sinbad I was thinking about, but I had to go with Jason the Argonauts because those skeletons are just so damn scary when you're young.
Like I said, I went with Godzilla. I wanted to go Abbott
that would be a good one, the original.
I wanted to go with Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, but I thought, I've already got Creature. There's my Universal. I should do something different. And I could have dipped into any of my Hammer catalog just because I have such a love for the Hammer films and the Amicus films. Witchfinder General with Vincent Price is another
Tales
one.
from the Crypt, the original Amicus film. Wow.
Yes. So, I mean, there's a ton of great stuff out there. A lot of it's public domain. And a lot of it's cheap because the studios don't know what they have. So they'll put out a bare bones edition of it. Yeah, you don't get the special features, but for $10, you can get a decent movie that you're going to watch more than once. I promise you.
Oh, yeah.
So
definitely.
We wanted to offer or open up for a Q&A, offer anybody an opportunity to ask any questions about classic monster movies, the podcast. What, you raised your hand?
Well, you mentioned, Vincent Price. What about the Dr. Fives
So
films?
she's asking about Dr. Fives, Vincent Price films.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So they're kind of the prototype Saw movies, aren't they?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff happening in those movies that, I think they play just as well now.
Yeah. I loved the first one. I mean, the second one, I thought bringing him back was a little bit of a stretch, but the first one is just amazing, and it just gives him that opportunity to ham up everything. And Yeah, the biblical plague motif, awesome.
Yeah.
Just who would? I mean, that's just sick and twisted.
Well, and that's something that I can't imagine any other actor from that time period pulling that off. Vincent Price, love him. But let's be honest, he's a little hammy, chews the scenery a little bit, but we love him for it, right? As Dr. Phibes, though, I mean, that's one of his iconic characters, I feel like. So.
Yeah, he got to play that again, and that type of character again in a couple of movies like what was it, Theater of Blood?
Yes.
With I think that was the one with Diana Riggs, where the Shakespearean actor.
Yes.
Oh man, he just chewed up the scenery in that, and it's great. Oh,
House
the
of
original.
Wax?
That was one. That was one of the third ones. My third tie, the original.
See, and I almost went with The Fly for one of my thirds. So.
Oh, that would be a good one too.
So. Speaking of The Fly, if I can throw this out there, I've actually recorded about 6 episodes worth of this podcast already with other guests and such. A future episode will feature a discussion of The Fly with illustrator Devin Devereaux. So that'll be coming down the line. And you mentioned King Kong earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The Hollywood Theater is playing King Kong here in Portland. We're going to crash that. We're going to do a Monster Kid Radio crash event. Basically just means we all go to the Hollywood and watch a movie together, maybe have pizza beforehand. But check out monsterkidradio.net for details on that, or find us on Facebook or whatever. I'll create an event for that. So.
And, just to plug myself, if you don't mind.
Please do, because I forgot to do it.
Oh, that's okay. I write a blog called The Shadow Over Portland. If you just Google The Shadow Over Portland, it'll come up, or... excuse me, go to shadowoverportland.blogspot.com. I try to list all the horror events, things that might interest people who like monster movies and stuff, that are happening in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Seattle, Tacoma. I'm going to be mentioning something that's happening in Denver real soon just because. I also I have a horror calendar where I try to make sure you can see the trailers of all the movies coming up.
Yes.
Hollywood is doing some amazing stuff this summer. They've got King Kong. The following weekend is going to be The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Both of those.
We're going to crash that too.
Oh yeah, both of those in 35 millimeters, so it's not digital. And then I think it's the weekend after that they're doing American Werewolf in London. And somewhere in between all of that, they're doing a summer camp program where they're showing, Sleepaway Cabin, Friday the 13th, Part 4, and The Burning. I'm not sure if those are going to be 35 millimeter or not. Just check on my website, and I'll let you know as soon as I do.
And what we'll do is we'll have a link to his website on our website over at monsterkidradio.net. So,
and vice versa.
Yeah, so you can always find him if you find us either online or on our Facebook page or any of that. So, any other questions about anything monster movie related?
Oh, one more, yeah.
What's up?
Oh, yeah. Oh, the Attack of the
The
Mushroom People.
Attack of the Mushroom, the Japanese?
Yeah.
Oh, I have not seen that.
God, I haven't seen it in a long time. Is it worth a revisit? Yeah? Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, no, that's one of those that I want to see, but just there are so many movies out there that you can get on DVD. Thank goodness for that now. That I want to get, I want to buy, I want to own. But I'm not going to go, I'm not streaming them in and trying to save my computer. I want the DVD.
Yeah.
Or the Blu-ray. And that's one of those I have to find because that just looks, some of the Japanese sci-fi ones are just really well done. And I'm not talking Godzilla. There was one.
Godzilla's well done.
Godzilla's
take that
well
back.
done. I said I'm not just talking Godzilla.
Okay.
There are some amazing Japanese horror films. I'm trying to remember the...
Monster Island? Okay.
There's also one about an alien invasion, a plane crash. I can't remember the name of it, but some disturbing special effects for the time and a really nihilistic ending. I mean, the ending is not a happy one. And it was just, I'd never heard it. I just caught it, I think on Hulu, and it was just fabulous. If I can remember the name, I'll mention it, but I'm blanking on it now.
You mentioned, that all these movies are on DVD, and you want to add them all. The nice thing about a lot of these movies is they're not making these anymore. They're not making them anymore. I mean, we're out of the 50s and 60s. They're not making these movies for the most part. There are some filmmakers these days who do revisit the 50s style of filmmaking, like Christopher R. Mim, who made the movie The Giant Spider, which I'm going to give away in a trivia contest. Let's see. Let's do a raising of a hand. Whoever raises their hand first will get called, okay? Let's do it that way. Don't just shout out the answer. Trivia contest for a copy of the movie The Giant Spider. Brand new movie about, a a giant spider.
Someone's got his hand already.
You ready? You ready? Okay. Well, if you don't win one, I'm selling them for $10 a pop at the table out there. So, all right. Somebody has just had a 100th birthday today. Yes, sir. Peter Cushing's birthday is today, 100 years old. You get a copy of the giant spider, sir.
Hey.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And you know what? I want to give another one away. So our slogan at Monster Kid Radio, like I said, it's where Karloff is still king, Bela Lugosi still lives, and John Agar still rules. I think I might have actually accidentally mentioned this in our talk, but what is the big bug movie starring John Agar? Uh-oh. People are going to have to listen to future episodes of Monster Kid Radio to find out, huh?
Well, give him a hint.
Give him a hint? It's a spider-like movie. It's a spider movie. It's not called The Spider, but... Tarantula it is, sir.
There you go.
That's right. There you go. Another wonderful film, which I'm covering on a future episode with the horror host Dr. Gang Green out of Tennessee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've already recorded that episode. His real name's Larry Underwood. He's an author as well, a friend of mine, and we talked about John Agar goodness wrapped around a giant spider for about an hour and a half. That'll be coming out on future episodes.
Yeah, and if you watch that movie, listen to the soundtrack because it's going to sound real familiar at times.
You know, that's something about a lot of the Universal movies, actually, especially from the 50s. Music from Creature would show up in other movies, including movies that they would distribute. King Kong vs. Godzilla has music from Creature from the Black Lagoon if you watch the American cut. Obviously, the Japanese release wouldn't have had that. But once we got our hands on it and added some scenes with the American newscaster up in a news station somewhere or other, they dumped in some music from Creature, especially when the giant octopus attacks.
Yeah, I mean, and Tarantula, the creature's sting, every time the spider comes on, it's there.
I'm gonna put that in post-production of this episode. I'll throw that in there so people know what I'm talking about. So.
It's really funny how they recycle a lot of the music. But, you know, I mean, from what I understand, well, you did. I think I heard it on that podcast you did for B Movie Cast.
Yeah.
The Creature was one of the few movies that they actually had to do a lot of music for. And if you watch it, it's because it's underwater. You know, there's no dialogue in that. So there's
a lot of music.
Yeah. And they just like to recycle.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's cheaper. It's economical. And, I mean, these movies weren't given the biggest budgets. I mean, these were B movies. They were monster movies, and they weren't really treated with the kind of respect that I suppose we all wish they were. I mean, even now, horror movies aren't the class act. You know, and that's just how it is. We don't care.
We'll still go see them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, well, hopefully that'll change this summer.
Yeah. Yeah, we got, Pacific Rim coming?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the new Godzilla next year, so.
I'm not holding my breath on that one.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Anybody have any other questions about classic? Want to throw anything out? Yes, ma'am.
What's your position on the newish monster movies like the Gatoroids and your Mega Pythons and all that kind of stuff?
So she's asking about like the sci-fi movies, I assume, like the Two-Headed Shark Attack and Sharktopus and the upcoming Sharknado.
Oh, I can't wait for that one. I'm so looking forward to it.
I go into these movies knowing exactly what they are. They're cash grabs based on a movie poster, but really, that's what they were before. I mean, there's a joke in the movie Ed Wood starring Johnny Depp, where Ed Wood's trying to get a job directing a movie, and he asks the guy, the producer, do you have a script? No, but I got a poster. I mean, that's how this genre has been for a long time.
You know,
just with CG now, that's all.
You know, Roger Corman would build an entire movie around just one single set piece or just the name of something. You know, hey, I've got this great title. Go write something.
I've got Boris Karloff for 2 extra days. Let's shoot something.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was all just, you know, seat of the pants stuff. And I mean, granted, these movies have a bigger budget than like most of Roger Corman's early ones, but they're still the same idea. It's just a stupid, fun monster movie, which, you know, I'm all for. I like those. They're not classics.
No.
They're easily forgetful. But if you got a bunch of people around and you're having a couple of beers, perfect.
You know, and I'll watch them once or twice, but I'll be honest, I am a purist. I'll go back to my original black and white stuff. But I mean, I do like them for what they are.
Well, I still have my copy of Mega Piranha, which makes me laugh hysterically every time.
Dude, the title Sharknado alone.
Oh, yeah.
Sharknado.
I heard that. I saw the poster for that online, and I'm like, oh, this has to be a reality.
It's a tornado with sharks.
I don't know how they're going to. Oh, and you know what?
I don't care how they do it.
It is coming out starring Tara Reid. This is going to be what I like to call craptastic. It's going to be great.
Yes.
Anyway, I think we had somebody way in the back.
Yes, sir.
What about like the William Castle films, like House Down the Hill, or What about the gimmicks though? What do you feel about that?
Okay. So the question is, he's asking about the gimmicks of the William Castle films.
I wish I had been around when they were in the theaters.
Man, how amazing would that have been? How amazing would to have your seat zapped at just the right moment.
Or just the skeleton from House on Haunted Hill coming out in Emergo. All it is a skeleton on a wire, but still.
And I wonder sometimes if we've kind of romanticized how awesome it would have been, because I wonder really how much money was thrown into that stuff back then. But, man, to have the opportunity to see a movie like that presented that way, sign me up. I'd be there every night.
If a theater in this area was showing it that way, oh, yeah, I'd be there. I'd be there in a heartbeat.
So if anybody knows of any theaters that'd be willing to, rig up a bunch of seats with some buzzers and such. Sense around. That's one of the
heavy bass rumble thing.
Well, even Harryhausen had kind of a he called it dynamation instead of animation.
Yeah.
Just the different things here and there. But I love the Castle stuff, man.
Oh yeah, William Castle stuff, great. I mean, House on Haunted. You get to see Vincent Price on acid in The Tingler. I mean, how can you not like that?
You can't miss that up. You can't pass that up. You gotta see it.
He's LSD tripping, as the character. I'm sure he wasn't actually doing it, but
they might not have had the budget for that.
No.
Or I don't know how you put that on a budget. I don't know what kind of...
That would be an awful hard tax write-off when the IRS goes, so what is this for?
Yeah. Any other questions? Or yes, sir.
What's your
Favorite Vincent Price portrayal?
That's like asking me what my top 3 movies is.
I really like him. I think maybe because I've seen it most recently. I like him in The Fly a lot. I find him to be... he's Vincent Pricey, but he's also sympathetic in that one as well and seems really torn about a lot of things happening in there. So I feel like in that film, Price gets to do more acting-wise instead of just, hey, I'm Vincent Price, Not to belittle what he does in House on Haunted Hill or anything, because those movies are great. But I think The Fly for me.
I would have to go with The Pit and the Pendulum.
Oh.
That he...
Yes.
Oh, man, when he goes crazy towards the end, he's just hamming it up and ripping up the scenery and just doing such a magnificent job. Yes. You watch him and you watch some of the other actors around him and you're like, whoa, they're just in a class. He's in a class above everyone in that, except for maybe Barbara Steele, but she wasn't in it very much, unfortunately.
Well, you put Vincent Price in a Corman production.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a gold right there. That equals awesome. You want to say something?
What about Bruce Price in
The Last Man on Earth?
Oh, yeah.
Price in The Last Man on Earth. When was the last time you saw that? It's been a while for me.
I saw it a couple of years ago over at the Hollywood Theater. If you like old movies, keep your eye on my blog site.
There you go.
But also you can look at the Hollywood Theater because they showed it in a double feature with the Omega Man. I mean, you got Vincent Price hamming it up. You got Charlton Heston going crazy.
How do you? It's like chocolate and peanut butter not quite mixing together for me. I don't know.
It was something interesting. But that was a good portrayal. I think he did a really good version of it. I don't think Richard Matheson was very happy with it anyway, but
I think it's my favorite of the 3 adaptations of I Am Legend.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Although Charlton Heston's got something.
The Omega Man one,
Man's got something going for it.
I saw before when I was a kid. I saw Last Man on Earth, so that one's got a place in my heart because it's just so over the top silly.
Yeah,
but it works. It works well. I think I saw that gentleman over there.
So the remake of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, they've talked about it off and on over the years. Last I heard, and then I stopped paying attention because it upset me. The last I heard, Michael Eisner's kid was going to do it at one point. Was it Brett Eisner? I don't remember his first name. I don't know if it's still going to happen. I mean, it might. It's Universal, and they tend not to really know what they've got when it comes to their classic monster collection. When it comes to exploiting their properties, they seem to think remakes are the best way to go instead of just celebrating what they already have. And putting out the best editions possible, but they've already got.
I don't know if it's going to happen, especially after the Wolfman.
The Wolfman, I think that's what you got to look at is how the last one did. That's what they care about. What's going to bring in the money.
And honestly, I know what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work. I mean, and so I don't think we're going to see a Creature very soon, if at all, because that one didn't do well. And if we do, it's going to end up doing what they're doing. They've rebooted their monster line with direct-to-DVD movies. I think it's called Werewolf, the Creature Among Us or something like that, which just, you guys don't know what you got.
If they do it, it'll be CG. It'll be a CG thing,
Oh, God,
and that'll take something away from it for me, because part of the reason I like some of these movies is because it's so hands-on. Somebody like a Paul Blaisdell or Millicent who worked on Creature from the Black Lagoon or Jack Pierce or any of these guys. These guys sweated into these makeups and these monsters. And I know CG has its place, but there's a big difference between some guy on a keyboard and Harryhausen hunched over a workshop table making the skeletons move, and I don't want to see a CGI creature.
Well, I don't have a problem with CGI, even bad CGI.
Okay, you're off the show.
Oh, no. Let me, would I have preferred Ray Harryhausen to do a version of Sharktopus? Yeah. That would have been awesome. But, the movie was fun. It was okay. It was a low-budget, cheap throwaway thing. But I think too often that's the go-to. Just do CGI because it's cheaper. The studios have more control over it, because it's not like Ray Harryhausen in his studio for, 6 weeks coming out and going, here it is, and the studio head going, well, I think we should change it. It's like, okay, it's going to take another 6 weeks and this much money. They can just go on a keyboard and click it away.
Exactly.
I think what they really should be doing is what Guillermo del Toro did in Pan's Labyrinth, where they combined CGI with some amazing practical effects.
Sure.
Because that works so much better. Practical effects, they do have you can't do it all the time, but when you can, I really think you should, especially for, human-sized creatures. It just works better. Like I said, I'm not against CGI. I have no problem with it. I want to see the giant robot beat the giant monster over the head with a cargo ship in Pacific Rim, and I know that's mostly CGI. But still, if you're going to redo the creature, you need a human in a suit.
You need something there. I feel like there's so much of a human element that makes that movie work to begin with. I mean, obviously it's a monster, it's a creature, whatever, but it's a Beauty and the Beast thing. And there's some real human emotions happening there. You and I were talking earlier about how, from a certain point of view, we're the bad guys in that movie. We went to his home. We have a scientist trying to take him out, either kill him or capture him and take him out. So, I mean, there's a lot of humanity in that monster that I don't know if you can get with CGI.
It would be tough. And also, it would just seem weird to me. And that's because I love the movie so much.
Yeah.
And that's my bias. I'll stand by it, though.
Yeah, although the bikinis would be a lot more revealing in the remake.
You don't need that. Yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions? Or yes, sir.
Just kind of on that same thought. What do you think of the John Carpenter redesign for the creature that they used in Monster Squad? Just sort of more.
Did Carpenter do the redesign on that?
Yeah, they were based on the drawings they were going to do with Carpenter's going to remake.
Okay. So he's asking about the redesign of the Gill-Man in Monster Squad.
I liked it.
Which I didn't realize were based on Carpenter's design. Stan Winston did the effects in the film, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I love the Monster Squad. It's a great film. I think it's a great throwback. We kind of look back at some of these movies with a lot of love and respect without cheapening them.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little disappointed that the Gill-Man got taken out so quick. But, when you think about it, he's not a vampire. He's not a werewolf. He's
the Gill-Man.
He's a Gill-Man. So shoot him and you're good, right? But no, I thought it looked all right. I like. There's a few moments in that movie, especially towards the end, where he's kind of huffing and puffing, and the gills are going, and it's really reminiscent of Ben Chapman doing the same thing in the original film.
Yeah, and it was one of those situations where they couldn't really use the Gill-Man because it wasn't Universal's property. They were doing the Monster Squad.
They had to tweak it just a little bit, so it wasn't quite. Yeah.
And they tweaked everybody. I mean, Frankenstein doesn't really look like, the Frankenstein we all know. Yeah. But still, I thought it was a great design. If you knew about the creature from Black Lagoon, you knew who the Gill-Man was.
Right. You knew what they were going for without saying it. So.
Yeah.
And the Monster Squad's great. We should talk about that on a future episode.
Oh, definitely.
I think we will.
That's
I've actually started talking to people about doing that. So.
That's one of those movies where you're not going to make that again because you've got kids cussing, smoking.
Yeah.
You can't do that
Those
nowadays.
are the kids that I would have hung out with, man. It's,
yeah.
I would have wanted to anyway. They probably would have scared me off.
Anybody else?
Any other comments or thoughts? I don't know how we're doing on time.
2 minutes. Well, good timing.
So I have a table set up out there in Podcaster Alley. I've got the Monster Kid Radio banner set up. If you want to come by and talk monster movies, feel free. If you want to flip through my Crestwood House creature, that's cool. Just make sure you leave it there when you're done because it's mine. I'm also selling copies of Christopher R. Mims' movies, The Giant Spider, as well as 7 other movies that he's done over the past 8 years. They're $10 a piece. 4 for $30 or all 8 for $60. They are all done in the style of the old 50s movies. They're a lot of fun. Giant Spider just had its world premiere a couple of days ago. So I'm there talking about those and just loving my monster movies. And Chris, thank you for being here, man.
My pleasure. Please follow me. As I said, I write The Shadow over Portland. I'm currently working on... I've gone through the entire franchise of Final Destination movies. My next movie up, though, for review once I get those done, is going to be Sugar Hill, which is the greatest blaxploitation zombie movie ever made. It's awesome. And so I also will have listings of all the horror events, sci-fi, fantasy, and stuff on the website. I try to do it every Thursday. Sometimes I'm a little late, but please keep looking on it.
And he's Blackula.
Well, I don't have Blackula yet.
Well, maybe we should do Blackula on the show, though.
Monster blaxploitation, because you got Dr. Jekyll
you got Blackenstein.
Blackenstein. What is it, Dr. Jekyll? And there was the Dr. Jekyll one with Ernie Casey was in it. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but there's so many of those out there. That is one. That's a good one.
We should do a whole series, like a theme month.
There you go.
In February, perhaps. Anyway, at the end of the month, I am introducing a movie called Horror Rises from the Tomb at the Clinton Street Theater. It's from the 70s. It stars Paul Naschy. I will be there presenting that. Not quite horror host style because it's just me, but we'll talk about the movie and then show the movie and do that. And that's going to be the midnight movie Friday night, so it's like $5. So invite you to join me out there as well. And then Monster Kid Radio is live and on the air starting next week. We're in iTunes already. You can subscribe to us there. We'll be in Stitcher as well for your smartphones, as well as our website, Facebook page, and group where we're all over. We're ready to launch this thing and get this machine running. So thank you for joining us for our premiere recording of episode 1 of Monster Kid Radio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Wonder Northwest.
Definitely.
Big thanks to Mary Suzanne Lampkins, who handled recording the audio in the panel room there when we recorded episode number 1. And as a reminder to folks, this Thursday night at 7:15, Monster Kid Radio is crashing the Clinton Street Theater for a showing of the movie Invaders from Venus, which is a throwback movie, kind of done in the style of the 60s sci-fi movies. And then the following night, as a midnight movie at the Clinton Street Theater, I am introducing and hosting the movie Horror Rises from the Tomb. This is the classic film from Paul Naschy, so that should be a lot of fun as well. You can find out more about these over at monsterkidradio.net or look up Monster Kid Radio on Facebook, where we've got the events planned, and you can join us there. Look forward to seeing you there, and I'll talk to you next time here on Monster Kid Radio. Thanks.